Welcome to the Hey Joe Show. Tonight is a special night. It's only special, I guess, because Aaron is not here with us tonight. And so those of you who normally tune in to the Hey Joe Show, you can see that there's an emptiness, a void in my studio here. And I'll be real with you. Aaron would love to be here. She's actually on a work trip. And so last week she mentioned to you that she wasn't going to be able to be here, but I wanted to go ahead with the show anyway. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to work it out here where I can see your live feeds or your live comments, and I will be able to respond to them. Now, we'll see if that works. Otherwise, I'm going to invite you to tune in tonight, and it may just be where you're a part of the show with me. But I always want to thank those at the lightnetwork.tv, and I also want to thank those at truth.fm. Truth.fm is a neat service that is available to local congregations. It's quite interesting because sometimes congregations want to reach a lot of people, but they don't necessarily know how within their community. And so one of the ways that truth.fm allows that to be is you can actually have your own, basically your own radio station. And if you're interested in that, of course, you can find them online. So anyhow, we are just blessed to be doing what we're doing. And so tonight, I got to tell you, tonight's show is a little different because we have been, up to this point in time, discussing the theme of pursuit. And we've talked about pursuing edification and pursuing peace, pursuing righteousness. And there's no doubt plenty of angles that I could go with this. In other words, you could take it many ways, and we're going to do that over the course of this particular season. But tonight's show is a little different, and I can't find how to look up actually in the page. I'm going to try to do that if I can, because I do want to hear your feedback and your comments. But we're going to do something a little different tonight, and I just wanted Colton, as he was looking at the title for tonight's episode, I told him, I said, let's just name it Straight from the Heart. And the reason I wanted to do this is because some episodes, it's okay, I guess, to kind of go off theme. And it's okay to just honestly speak straight from the heart. And so what I wanted to do tonight is just kind of, I guess, maybe unplugged. Got something on my heart that I want to kind of discuss with you. And I don't know if you want to give feedback or not. You can. However, tonight's episode is really more something that I've learned in life. And so if you will tonight, bear with me on that. Some of you know that almost 2 years ago now, my father died. My dad was one of my heroes, like many sons. Look up to their father. In this life, I was blessed with great grandfathers and also a good dad, and so there's always that desire to, I guess, kind of look up to them, and in the sense of direction, in the sense of who they are, what they've sacrificed. And the older you get, the more about your parents. That's one thing that I have learned, and you appreciate a whole lot more about them when you no longer have them with you. And so from time to time, I would be the first one to tell you, tonight's show, I told you, is a raw show, so I want to be real with you. Over the last 2 years, I've had some moments where I've just cried. And I've had moments where I will look back at text messages, or I'll look back at emails, and in the moment that those were given, they weren't necessarily anything special. They were just things that a dad gives to a son, especially if the dad is one that that kind of takes it upon himself, and Dad did this. He believed it was his responsibility to teach every opportunity that he had, and it was one of those things I really didn't appreciate at the time. But what's funny is now that I'm a father and my kids are growing up, and especially with one that's a senior in high school, looking at college next year, you begin to understand the window that seems to be closing as your kids kind of fly out of the nest on their own. And so I can understand that. But those text messages and those emails, they mean so much more to me now than they did when Dad was alive. And I wish I had not taken them for granted when he was alive, but I did. But what's interesting is about a month ago, I got online into my email, and I Googled, when you can search the names, right, and in your email list, and I searched my dad's name just to see what emails would come up. And what was interesting is on the day that I searched his name, almost to the date, I mean, I'm talking maybe it was 2 days off, he had sent me one of the last emails that I'd gotten from him. Now, he would send me text messages, but that email was one of the last ones. And it was quite interesting that particular email was about the subject that I want to talk to you tonight about. But it was also one of those things that really hit home to me. And Dad was sending it to me, I firmly believe, as a way to back me up and for me to reflect on what the devil could do, even in the lives of people who were trying to pursue godliness and trying to advance the cause of Christ. And what was interesting is, I want you to think about this tonight. This is basically what the email was, and Dad didn't write the email. It was a forward from someone, and I can't think of the name off the top of my head, but the idea was, in an army, sometimes the army can spread themselves out over the battlefield, much like I guess you would think perhaps happened in like a Civil War concept or colonial America, the battlefield where they would spread out. And sometimes that line may not be bigger than the line of the enemy. And so what happens is one force may be pushing so hard in the center that the middle of that military line, that line of men who are wanting to advance their cause and who are equipped themselves to advance their cause, well, what can happen is the opposing side could remaneuver and outmaneuver the individuals that are advancing. And sometimes it's not because the line is short. Sometimes it's because the maneuvering of the enemy actually can reposition to attack you where you're the weakest. And so that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of this military pursuit that's attacking up the middle, and the middle is making advancements because that's where the most of the force is. And spiritually speaking, the implication is that's where the majority of the spiritual maturity is, right? And the drive to advance the cause of Christ, and doors of opportunity are being opened. And I firmly believe that that's what my dad saw with me, especially in that season of my life where I was on the road much more than I have been lately because of the coronavirus. And I seem to always have been busy doing something. And Dad didn't write me that and send me that because being busy for the cause of Christ is bad, or doing things for the cause of Christ is bad. That's not the implication behind that. But the implication was this, and this is what I want us to think about tonight. And of course, if you have comments, I was able to find the thread, so I can talk with you. So if you want to write on Facebook, you're welcome to do so underneath the video thread there. I can see you. But here's what the thrust of that email was about, is don't forget your flank. Don't forget your flank. Now, for those who may have no clue what I'm talking about is this: don't forget the edge of your line. Don't forget, we would say, the individuals who are on the very edge. And of course, I've oftentimes thought about it this way, that if I were going to be in a battle, I know at the center of that line, is typically where individuals say the heat of the battle is. But I want you to think about this. I want you to think about what you as a soldier are blessed with in the middle of that line, okay? You're blessed with the best artillery. You're blessed with perhaps the most reinforcements. You're blessed with an individual on either side of you as you go into that battle. And so the idea is, okay, I have people on either side of me that are going to watch my right and they're going to watch my left, and I just have all of the benefit of being right in the middle of that line. But I want you to compare that to the flank. The flank is the very end of that line. And so as the middle seems to be advancing, the hope is that the flank advances at the same pace as the middle of that line. But if, spiritually speaking, the middle of that line is where there's more spiritual maturity, there's doors of opportunity, perhaps there's an advancement at a quicker pace on the line, then what happens is, if you're not careful, is you can actually pull away from your flank. And if you pull away from the flank, one of the concepts that happens within military is that the enemy could outmaneuver you, and actually they could surround the flank and either come in beside you or they could cut off the flank. I like what Tandy said. The flank has to know how to hold on tight. And Tandy, you're right with that. There's no doubt about it that the flank must be able to move and stay with the rest of the line. But the reality is the flank doesn't necessarily have the same resources or isn't at the same place, militarily speaking. Spiritually speaking, that would be where your perhaps less spiritually mature are. Perhaps that's where children are. Individuals who we would say are perhaps more vulnerable to the wiles of the devil. And so the idea behind that is that the middle could quite possibly get so focused on what they are doing that they forget that there is some vulnerability on the side. And so what that whole article was about was, as you're advancing the cause of Christ, don't forget your flank. And of course, on the Hey Joe show, I thought personally, of course, when I read that, that was another one of my moments of mourning for my dad. Another one of my moments where you start crying and you it's almost as if you are realizing maybe in a much heavier way the weight of what your dad was trying to say in that moment. And of course, that's what that was for me. But he spoke volumes to me, especially in the line of work that I'm in, where, part of what we do is we go. And that's a blessing that we get to be in this ministry where we go and we have the opportunity to, I get to preach at congregations, speak at youth rallies, meet individuals throughout America, literally in this work that we're doing and trying to advance the cause of Christ. And I will tell you this, that I don't know how this would go if I didn't have my family with me. Because that would be a lot of nights in hotels by yourself, and that would be a lot of times at the airport by yourself. And so I'm grateful that Aaron and the kids can travel with me. And I would offer this to you. We're in interesting times of a lot of people who are schooling at home. They're just doing so over Zoom. But what's great about schooling at home, and of course we have another word for that, right? Homeschool, is that you have flexibility as a family to stay together more, because the truth is, even within your families, that window of opportunity is very small when it comes to the impact at the very young ages that you and I have on our kids, on our nieces and nephews, and so forth. But I thought it was quite interesting, because what that email spoke to me saying was that I needed to be aware not to advance so quickly in the middle that I leave my flank exposed. And what it did do, and sometimes I do better at this than others, is it reminded me that I have a responsibility to my flank. That I can't get so excited about pressing the middle that I forget those who are in my flank. And of course, the Hey Joe show is all about helping teens in this world and helping families in this world. And I guess got to be real to you tonight. This show is, maybe it's so real and so raw because it is a personal experience. Maybe not so much something that I've prepared, but more just speaking from the heart. In my own personal life, I don't want to lose any of my family to the devil. I don't want to be so busy about the Lord's work that I forget that my family is my number one mission. And I've oftentimes said that Noah didn't get everybody on the ark, but he got his family on the ark. And even in that, when the ark landed, there's still some issues that occurred after that. But the reality is this: he got his family on the ark. It's not that family happens in the absence of issues. It's that those who are in the midst of the line need to make sure that they're not moving at such a pace that those in the flank are isolated. Now, I guess maybe we need to re-envision the idea of where we position those, perhaps, who would normally be in the flank. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe the issue is that should we put the most vulnerable on the flank? In other words, we think that in the middle of the line is where the strength goes. But have you ever thought that perhaps those who are the weakest, those who are the least mature within your line, your family, that maybe they need to go right there in the middle with you? In other words, it's not about you advancing and winning the cause. It's about making sure that collectively as a unit you advance and win the cause, right? And of course, spiritually speaking, it's the cause of Christ. It's seeking to glorify God, as the Apostle Paul would say in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, that he didn't want to miss out on eternity, so he would discipline his body so that he wouldn't miss out. So that's what you want. But sometimes we get so busy in life that we forget our flank. Now, I want to step out of that. And of course, if you have comments, feel free to add that. Jonathan said this: another key is to balance your time with work and family. And Jonathan, that's kind of where I was going, because not everybody has the ministry in the sense of the job. I hate to use it that way, that we have. And so for most individuals, it's not about, well, I'm traveling here speaking, I'm traveling there preaching, but it is about the idea of what am I trying to advance? Am I trying to advance in the corporate arena of my life? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to advance in the corporate arena of life. But am I advancing at the corporate arena of life to the exclusion of my flank and the well-being of my flank? When you start looking at the idea of, is it that I'm trying to advance in the eyes of man? And sometimes that may be in corporate, but sometimes that could also be much like the Pharisees did. They were seeking the rewards of men there in the Sermon on the Mount. And so we can seek to advance in that area where people think really good things about you. And that could happen where they look at you and they think really good things about you. But when they think of your line and when they think of your flank, they don't see that same leadership, and they don't see that same success. And that's where it's scary, is when an individual is so far out ahead that they leave their loved ones behind. And I'm not talking about loved ones that have outright rejected the gospel. I'm talking about those whom that individual had the responsibility to help disciple and to help mature in the faith. Tandy said this: it reminds me of old westerns where chuck wagons put weakest in the middle and cowboys fought for everyone. That's my daddy coming out. Miss him too. Yeah. Well, Tandy, you know what's funny is because I thought of the same general concept, and this is, I guess, maybe a time for some self-evaluation when it comes to our family units, and when it comes to the family units perhaps that we plan to have in the future. Maybe instead of seeing ourselves as a line that is spread thin, where the middle is where the mature push forward and attack, and hopefully those on the flank would be like, you ever played Red Rover? Red Rover, I know you have, right? Red Rover, send, I don't know, on over. When I was in elementary school, that seemed to be a game that we got to play a lot. Well, here's the deal. Some big old guy comes running through, and he hits what he believes is the weakest bond. You know why elementary kids have already figured out the concept of, look, I'm not going to hit them where they're strong, I'm going to hit them where they're weak? You know why that elementary kids figured that out? It's because they knew they stood a chance of having more success if they hit them where they were weak. And so instead of spreading out and holding hands, Tandy, what if we re-envisioned our family more like the Old West with the chuck wagon, right? With the wagons that would circle, and the vulnerable were not on the fringe, but they were surrounded, and they were placed in the middle. They were protected because the reality was, the threat was realized that if the enemy is going to pick any of them off, it's going to go after this. It's going to go after those who are weak, those who are stranded, those who are on the edge. So how do we do that? That's the question tonight, right? How, if we're going to re-envision the family, not so much like a line that's spread thin, but a collection of individuals who circled up and they're watching. See, in my mind, instead of the line where we're standing shoulder to shoulder in a horizontal manner, I immediately pictured Aaron and I standing together, but then with our kids wrapped in a circle, right? So our backs were to each other, and we were looking out, much like perhaps some of you have seen animals in Africa or in other places where they're feeding, and what will happen is they will back together their back ends so that their faces can look out, and the goal is that as they eat in that pattern, that they will be able to see the attack of the lion who might want to pick one of them off. And they understand that as long as they stay together as a unit, that the lion stands less of a chance of surprising any of them. But at the moment in time that they spread thin, that's when the enemy has success. And I would offer this to you. As a husband, when you spread thin in your family, when you spread thin in your church family, when you spread thin from individuals that help keep you accountable, that's when you are most susceptible to the attack of Satan. As a woman, as a wife, you want to know where you're most vulnerable? Is when you spread yourself thin. When you spread yourself thin with the church, or you don't get involved with the church. That's when you're most vulnerable. When you refuse to have people in your life who will help keep you accountable. And your children do the same. So don't make me, I could, I guess, chase all kinds of soapbox and say this. Are you as a family spread too thin? Look, I get it tonight. Tonight, and I know it's an unusual night because it just is what it is. We had 1, 2, 3 different locations to be at. So I'm not, it's not like I don't get it. I get it. But I can tell you this, that even though we are going in multiple directions at times, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be spread thin. You see, because the cohesiveness of the family, the watching each other's back, helping each other to stay accountable, looking out for Satan in the lives of one another, that's what I mean by circling the wagons. I like what Tandy says. She said, I want as many layers as possible. I do too. Because I don't want it to be, well, all Satan has to do is get through one layer, therefore, there's victory. No. I want, if he gets through that layer, I want there to be another layer before he's ever going to have that victory. And that's the idea of fortifying your family. And that doesn't mean hide inside and never go out.
Although in the time of COVID, I guess that could mean that. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm not talking about withdrawing from the world. What I'm talking about, though, is being intentional, pursuing fortification. You see, I knew I could work that theme in there somehow. I'm talking about making sure you don't leave your flank vulnerable. Jonathan said this: an organization is strong as long as its leadership is strong. If the family has a strong leadership, then it will be strong. However, if the leadership is weak, then the rest will be weak. We stay strong with strong, mature leaders who step up and promote unity in the flank. We should be one together for each other. You're right. In the sense of leadership is more than you advancing in the middle of the line. And I got to be real with you, right? This is called straight from the heart. I got to guard against that personally. Because I know I'm accountable to God for me. I know that I can't make other individuals do anything. Right? Now, I have said before, and those of you who have had me in to do seminars, I can threaten my kids, and I can make them do things, but I can't make their heart want to do things. And eventually, I can't make them do things as they grow up and they get out of my home. And so the idea is this, then how do we lead without leaving others who are in our circle of responsibility behind? And I would offer this to you, Jonathan. Your point's well made, but I would offer this: strong leadership means you don't leave them behind. That's what strong leadership is. In other words, your flank is worth paying attention to. Your flank is worth making sure the enemy doesn't outmaneuver you. Your flank is worth you saying, okay, maybe I need to pull back because I'm too busy at work, or I'm too busy advancing what is a good thing. Maybe I need to come back so that I don't forget that my flank is always going to be a little bit behind me. And perhaps we need to re-envision it not as a line, but as a circle where we have each other's backs. I don't know if the show makes sense to you tonight or not. I'll be real with you tonight. As I thought about this show, and I thought, well, Aaron's not here to help me, add the humor and to keep me on task. I guess I could just ramble. But I don't know. That email has been on my mind and on my heart lately, and I haven't shared it with you yet. I don't share a lot of everything that my dad wrote to me, and that's not because I can't. It's because some of that stuff is very personal, in the sense of still what I process through, And so anyhow, tonight though, I wanted to share that with you. I wanted to share it because I thought it was worth sharing on the Hey Joe Show, and that's this: don't leave your flank vulnerable. Make sure that when you look at family, you're considering those who are the weakest, those who are the least mature, and make sure that you're not positioning them to get picked off by the enemy. All right, so here's the deal. That's your show for tonight. I appreciate Tandy and Jonathan. You guys have both been really good at chiming in, and I've had counters tonight because I will say this: even though Aaron is not here, we still are going to do the Wheel of Fortunate. Now, the only question is, who had, at this point in time, the most comments? So I don't know who's had the most comments. They're being counted. I do know there's 22 comments. And I'm going to guess, are they the safe? Was it a tie between Tandy and Jonathan? All right. Well, here's what we're going to do, because I know Tandy's already won. And it's not that you can't win twice, but since it was a tie, Jonathan, you're going to win tonight. And we're going to be spinning for you the Wheel of Fortune. And, of course, if you're new to the Hey Joe Show, the Wheel of Fortune is where we give away a free product from Kyle Publications every episode of the Hey Joe Show this season. We're not going to do that every season, so you got in at the right season. So here we go, Tandy. I appreciate you. Tandy is our top fan, by the way. If you want to know how you can become a top fan, you've got to comment. You've got to get on here and participate. Don't leave it behind. But Tandy, you are on my screen. You are a diamond, young lady. I appreciate you. But Jonathan said this tonight before we close. We're going to keep Spencer Broom's family in our prayers, and we will. We're going to pray for him before we close. But Jonathan, let me do this first. let me spin here the Wheel of Fortune, and you know how it works. Those of you who have tuned in before, whatever it lands on, that's the prize that we're going to send to you. So, Jonathan, you'll need to send me a private message on Facebook with your mailing address, and I will get it out to you. So here you go, Jonathan. This spin is for you. I hope you don't get like a kid book, but if you do, it's okay. All right, you got a family devotional. Family devotional. All right. Now, those of you who have been with Kyle Publications for a while, you know that we have 12 family devotionals that are a series of about 31 devotionals per set. So that will take you through an entire year. And one of the neat things about the Hey Joe Show is, about Kyle Publications, is our family devotionals are object lesson based. So, Jonathan, here's the cool thing for you. I know you're a preaching student. Those family devotionals for you personally will be useful for you in your future with your family, but also from a minister standpoint, you could find a lot of really good object lessons that you might be able to use to flush out and help you in illustrating some of your points in some of your sermons. So may help in a Bible class, things along those lines. So go ahead and send me, I'll tell you what to do, Jonathan. In the private message, send me your email address. If you'll just send me your email address, because I'm going to email that to you because it's a digital copy. So anyhow, that'll be awesome. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Oh, yes, my producer. It's funny because I might as well put Colton over here in the show and let him just produce it from the table as much as he and I have been interacting tonight. He wanted me to remind you about our YouTube channel. If you have not already, subscribe to the Hey Joe Show on YouTube. We're going to ask you to do so. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, and you'd be surprised that your subscription, even though you may tune in through the Light Network, you may watch this live on Facebook, your subscription to those particular pages help move the show up so it will become more visible to other people that might otherwise not find the Hey Joe Show. And who knows where they're at in their walk with the Lord. Perhaps something that episode is on will be an encouragement to them. So anyhow, again, thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Thank the lightnetwork.tv. You can check this audio out on Thursday when it is released. And I also want to thank Truth.fm. Check us out at kylepublications.org. If you have not already done so, like our page on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We would appreciate it. But that's all that I have to say tonight. So, Colton, guess what? I'm out.
Please hang up and try again.